Marty, tell me a little bit about a PC game and a sci-fi game that you do care about.
I do care about this. No Man's Sky, which is our IGN first for the month of July.
Yeah.
Mitch, all three of us were we hung out with the folks at Hello Games at E3, and we spent a couple hours talking with them and seeing a demo of the game, and we sort of had our first like extended look at like, here is what you are doing for 20, 30 minutes. And
you can watch all of us sit in the background of that video. As
yeah,
Ryan McCaffrey
which
plays
I'm still real great video. Still kind of weirded out I'm in the background.
Yeah, we're just standing there like smiling, going, wow, the whole time.
But we were talking, like, this game had always been this sort of nebulous thing of, like, it was like a bag of promises that didn't really make...
A bag of promises.
It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, I'm like, I want to do all this stuff, but I don't know how it all connects together. And seeing it at E3 was sort of the first time where it started to really click for me and make sense.
Yeah.
In the way that, so we landed on a planet, and we started exploring, and we pulled our gun out, and started blowing up pieces of the environment, which, Dan, you're going to like. You like the fact that you could just blow apart the environment and blow holes and things.
That is a killer feature for me in virtually any game.
No, and it's great. And you can just, and like, but it's not just cosmetic. Like, you can burrow down into a cave underneath the ground and find stuff, or you get like ore or some sort of resource for blowing apart rocks. But the big thing to me that's sort of, I was like, oh, this makes sense now, is that there's pretty much a GTA-esque wanted system on planets. And yeah, if you're going to be like a scoundrel and start killing animals and blowing things apart, and
it's high risk,
and shooting ships, like, you're going to get to cool stuff, but like space cops are going to come after you, and space cops are not going to be happy with you. And so we saw that, and I was like, oh, this is the first, as simple as that mechanic is.
Like, there's a system here.
And I'm like, oh,
things are at
this
play.
Makes sense. It starts tying things together. I'm like, oh, I sort of understand now, like, the role-playing element of, well, I can be this, or that, but there might be consequences to one or the other.
So I'm curious from your perspective, because you were notorious in the IGN office, or at least notorious between Marty and I, as we talk about, like, is it a game?
Of course it's a game.
And No Man's Sky for a long time was a Dan Stapleton not a game, where
no,
you flew around, you looked at stuff, but you didn't really do anything.
Oh, right, yeah. So
your mind has changed from what it was, I would assume.
There are objectives in there. Like, there are things to do. There are things that
there are beacons
measure,
now.
Yeah, that measure your progress. There are obstacles between you and things that you want.
Yeah.
Basically for me, a game is something that throws things out there and says, hey, I bet you can't get this. Try and do it. And it does that because it has like a trading economy and things like that will allow you to accumulate wealth and upgrade your ship. And whether or not there's an endpoint, which there probably, and there's the center of the universe, like it's saying like, oh, everyone should try and, I guess, the center of a galaxy. But it's like, oh, you're trying to get here. It's like that they have set a goal. Get to the center of the galaxy.
That center of the galaxy. We need to do a feature on what we think is that center of the galaxy. I'm going to put a note.
Make a note.
I'll make a note.
Well, we'll never remember this one.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I love the beacon stuff, too, that you mentioned of, like, you're gathering a bunch of stuff, and then you sort of send the information into space, and you're like, this is all the stuff I discovered. I discovered this weird cow thing, and this is the planet I have, and look at that rock.
I also like that the beacon system is like, okay, I've landed nowhere near a beacon whatsoever, and I'm going to venture out far into the world, and I'm going to do stuff and cause chaos and kill people and take their stuff and get some minerals and get do all this stuff that will make me a ton of money. But now the wanted system has me being pursued relentlessly by ATSTs and spaceships and weird laser gunmen, and I need to get to my ship, which is very far away, and then I need to fly until I can find a beacon. And unless you deposit all of that information and minerals and gear into the beacon, you lose it all. So it's like weirdly roguelike-esque in that sense, where the stuff you're doing is constantly at risk. So there's this sense of like incredible reward that you've collected all this stuff. But until you survive and get out with it, like you may lose it all.
Totally, to bring up the game I bring up on literally every podcast ever, it reminds me of Dark Souls, where it's like, man, I'm doing this rad run. I have so many souls, but holy crap, I need to find a bonfire.
Yeah, gotta find a bonfire.
I'm like, well, if I go a little bit further, and then I die, and I'm like, Marty, you're an idiot.
This is basically you just gotta find a space bonfire and shoot.
What is a beacon if not a space bonfire?
Exactly. You just gotta upload your souls into space.
Update your drivers. PC podcast.
Nailed it. I think 20 minutes with this game, like the 20-minute demo we saw, was enough for me to go like, oh, like, okay, I finally understand what this is. Because I went from not really believing it was ever going to happen to thinking like, man, maybe this will come out this year.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing they've still got to really sell me on is like the whole combat systems.
Yeah.
Because like you can have those things coming after you, trying to kill you.
Right.
But fighting them has to be fun.
Sure. Right. Like at what point am I like, I literally can't fight them. I don't have a weapon that can take them down.
And what we saw of the combat thus far was not super interesting.
Yeah, it was sort of like a space pistol that just blew stuff up, and I'm like, well, are there going to be like, can I get a space rifle?
No.
Or a space
So the way it works
gun?
is that gun is the one gun you have. But the version we saw and the version you can see in the footage we have on IGN is like the version Sean made, the creative director made for that. Your upgrades and the items you buy and the pieces you equip that weapon with might make it a different weapon.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's a single weapon that's modular.
It's like a tool. It's your No Man's Sky tool.
Yes, because it is also what you use to mine the planet. And those have mods as well. Like everything is modular. Your suit, like your EVA suit or whatever, that like lets you survive in the atmosphere of certain planets. Like you need different suits to go to different places. You might go somewhere that's like, well, if you land here, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
So don't go there until you come back.
Yeah, and
come
I like
back with a better
That's
suit.
like in Super Metroid, how you need a certain suit in order to get to the fire zone because you're gonna burn up.
Basically, yeah.
So
this is Metroid Space Dark Souls.
So like the moddable gun sounds promising, but like just the combat mechanics we've seen so far have been incredibly basic.
Yes,
very
point,
very
shoot,
basic.
run away.
Plus, like there's deliberately no reason to kill those animals except in self-defense. Like they've deliberately said there's no reward for doing it.
Yeah, which is interesting that there's no like you need to eat system, or you can bring this bring a body back for research.
Yeah, or you can skin it or whatever.
Yeah.
So without an incentive to attack those things.
Why would I possibly do
why
that?
are they even there?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're scanning them. It's like, well, I've scanned them, and now what?
Yeah.
So I think they need to make those all the unique life forms we find. They need to have their more to do with them.
Yeah, and I would imagine there will be ones that are more predatory, or you'll find like we saw one in the trailer like ages and ages ago that was enormous.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's like a literal dinosaur.
Well, yeah,
that thing will probably kill me if I approach it.
But again, it's like you see it, and then what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Man, I would love a sort of ability to. I mean, I doubt this is in the game, but almost like a space Noah's Ark kind of thing of like, I want to grab a male and a female of every
get them off
of every monster. Yeah, or to be the ability to be like, hey, I'm gonna be like Johnny Depp and take my dogs to Australia, and I'm gonna take all these weird giraffe things to this other planet and see if I muck everything up. Like,
oh man,
just
just
like the idea of just like playing around
wrecking
with it,
the
like,
ecology.
What can I do? Yeah,
Yep.
like can I make an animal extinct? Can I be like, hey, this little bear thing's cool. I'm gonna kill all of them so no one ever sees it again.
I'm not even gonna document it. It'll just never have existed.
I actually asked Sean about that. And he said it's theoretically possible, but very hard to do.
Right. I mean, the idea that these are literally planet-sized planets is insane.
Yep.
Yeah, just that, and also that whole zoom out of like, here is one planet. Now we're gonna zoom out forever, and that is every planet. I'm just like, this is terrifying.
It's too much game. It's the Skyrim problem on a
PG.
larger scale, where they're like, hey, you can go do anything, and I'm like, I gotta go play
crippling
something
anxiety
with
right
an
now.
objective.
I'm gonna play Minesweeper, the 20 by 20.
Yeah, and there's the exploration aspect of it was a big part of Skyrim.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm gonna go out and find stuff. To just I don't know what I'm gonna find. I'm just gonna go off in a direction, and something interesting might happen. So as long as interesting things keep happening in No Man's Sky, then it could be limitless.
Yeah, I think the big
exploration.
thing is just as long as they keep delivering the unexpected. Like if I sit down every night and play the game for even half an hour, and if I'm like, oh man, I didn't see that before, or man, that's a weird thing, or like I haven't seen ships interact like that, then it's worth it. If every night I go in and I come back and I have a story, like totally.
And I think that's
game
really
for
what
a
they're
long
relying
time.
on. They're relying not on like, oh, I went in and I scanned an animal and then I traded some goods.
Yeah.
They're relying on you warp into a planet and suddenly pirates warp in and start raiding a faction ship. And you're like, oh my god! And then I got involved and I shot down the pirates and they gave me a discount at their store or whatever. Like things like that. Or you're on a planet and you see one animal hunting another and you can decide to engage or not. Like small anecdotes like that, I think, are what are going to be the big conversation.
Totally.
But I mean, having to make those events happen, like there's got to be a certain amount of scripting to happen. To make that happen. So whether they can, it's a very small team. The guys, people working on this game, whether they have the resources to populate it with enough of those, random feeling events, dynamic events. It's a question that we're gonna have to sit down with it for a lot longer than 20 minutes to find out.
Yep.
Hopefully, we get to do that very, very soon.
And it is coming out concurrently on PC with PS4.
Yeah,
it's all
whenever
all
it comes
been shown.
out, whether it's this year or next year.
Hopefully this year.
Yeah,
I really want to play that game.
They're talking PS4, real big, but like when they showed it, it was on PC.
Yeah, and they're talking PS4 because Sony has like a partnership with them.
Yeah.
I imagine Sony's helping with some of the dev.
Pay
yeah,
for
really
it.
cool
Yeah.
stuff. Or pay for it. Yeah.